Good afternoon. I see people that are joining. We will give everyone just a few minutes before we get started. Okay, I think most everyone has had a chance to join. Welcome to our January family webinar with Region 10 and Partners Resource Network. My name is Sarah Untersea. I am the School, Family, and Community Engagement Consultant here at Region 10. Jim Wright is also with us today from Partners Resource Network. We are so happy to have you here, and we are so very happy to welcome Letitia Stevenson with us today from Region 10. And she is going to be talking about a family toolkit for effective positive behavior supports in the home. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to her. I will be dropping some links into the chat that have today's presentation on them so that you are able to follow along if you would like.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. I had to make a mental note not to say good morning because that's what I've been saying all morning. And it is literally just now afternoon. Thank you for inviting me back. I know I was here last year. I really do enjoy being given the opportunity to talk to parents. It was one of my favorite parts about being in the district. And just a little about myself. I am the school psychology consultant here at Region 10. But I was practicing in schools as a school psychologist for I feel like a really long time, but probably a short amount of time to a lot of other people. But I worked in rural districts, charter schools, large urban districts. So I've had a very broad experience level all the way back in grad school, since grad school. I went to the University of North Texas for my undergrad, and then Trinity University in San Antonio for my master's degree in school psychology. And that is where I was in rural schools and charter schools, sort of all over the place. Today, the title said, where it's the toolkit. So it's meant to give you ideas, strategies to address a variety of behavioral needs, communication needs at home. Not every single thing that we talk about will be applicable for every single situation because every child is unique. All of these practices have been research based to work for not just students who have ADHD or not students who have autism or students who have significant emotional needs or mental health needs. They're good practices. What's interesting about these good practices, though, is that they can often be complete opposite practices than what we would typically see parents do in the past. Not saying that what parents did in the past was wrong or incorrect, these are just different. And so if you start implementing some of these practices, it may not feel natural at first, and that's okay, and that's completely normal. The thing to remember is that practice and persistence is what's going to get you to where you're comfortable changing the way that you interact with your student. Because yes, that is a huge part of being able to address behavior and address communication needs at home. It's not just getting the child to change, it's changing your own behavior. Okay. So we're going to talk about several different things today. And if we don't get to some of the things at the end, just know the slide deck is pretty self-explanatory towards the end. So you can always go back and look at that slide deck. And then if you have any questions, you can always email me or email Sarah and she'll get the questions to me. One of the first big things we're going to talk about is setting limits. And this is critical for any child, any child. It doesn't matter if they have a disability or not. Children need limits to be set. And so what are limits? Why are we talking about this? Some people may say that, oh, they're rules, they're expectations. And in a way, yes, that does encapsulate all of those things. But I want to change how we think about limits. So limits are a tool to help children understand how the world works. It's a tool to help them build empathy. It's a tool to help them learn how to plan and make decisions, which is critical for independence. And it also helps them learn how to control impulses and to stay focused. What you're not doing is just telling someone what to do. You're not just using this as punishment. It's not meant to be a threat or ultimatums. It's not meant to be bribery. You are giving a set of limits, a set of expectations to kind of help shape the world and how they interact in the world. It's not necessarily about control. In fact, it's the opposite. It's empowering children to be able to make decisions that are good for them and good for the family and good for their friends and their class. That's what it's meant to do. We like to think as parents that we have control over our children and the choices they make and the things that they decide to do or not to do. But as much as we would like to think that, our children are humans, so they have free thought. They have a brain that makes decisions. Whether or not they're good decisions in our opinion or not, doesn't matter. They have free will. And so our jobs as the adults in their life is to help them learn how to make better decisions and choices. And part of that is setting limits in a safe environment so that they can build skills and become more independent. Sometimes children will go into a classroom and it's very chaotic and there'll be a lot of questions. Why is it so chaotic? What's going on? And I would come in and it's like, oh, okay, maybe this is a brand new teacher. We need to help this teacher learn how to set limits and routines and expectations because it gives a sense of anxiety relieving power to that teacher. And it's the same at home. If there's a lot going on, whether it's in your control or not, providing limits, setting those expectations can reduce anxiety, which then can reduce tantrums. If your child's engaging in a tantrum, it can reduce behaviors that are related to anxiety that maybe you didn't think was related to no boundaries or limits. So it's really key that we try to make sure that we have good limits set. But it's very challenging to do that if you haven't ever had to do that before. Some kids don't need a lot of limits, or the limits you naturally build in your family are enough for that student. Some students or some children need more. Routines and rules or limits are very important for us to outline or define. Routines are just a sequence of actions regularly followed. A limit is a boundary, an edge, a point beyond which you cannot pass. So you're setting that limit. You're like, this is it. You cannot pass. It reminds me of when you have young children and the one child is like, he's touching me, he's touching me. And then the other sibling who's supposed to be touching that student is like not touching, but so close. He has not gone over the limit or that expectation, but oh, he's towing that line, right? That's how I think of limits. And then you have a rule, and this is an authoritative regulation or guiding behavior. Routines usually become habits. This could be getting ready for bed, getting ready for school in the morning, maybe putting together your lunch, that type of thing. Limits is something that, like we've talked before, that you set in order to create a safe environment. And rules are like no running or no diving in the shallow end. There's a purpose for it. We have to have rules. There is a purpose for it. But the limits kind of let them figure out how far they can swim, how like close to the edge can they get safely. It allows them to kind of explore the world around them, again, in that safe environment. So I'm saying you need probably all three of these in your family. So why are limits important? Sometimes parents are like, I have rules, I have expectations. This is how it's going to be in my house, and we cannot deviate that, and we won't deviate from that. And unfortunately, oftentimes, especially with a child who struggles with understanding the world around them or struggles with being able to communicate in the world around them, kids don't respond well to those type of very rigid rules and expectations. And that makes sense because they may need to understand why, or it may need to be communicated in a different way. Limits are important because they make children feel safe and protected. When children know what to expect, they feel more secure. I work with school psychologists, and one of the trainings we do is we talk about children who have a visual impairment and what does their development look like and how different that can be. So you can almost think of this type of scenario in the same way when talking about limits and feeling secure. A seeing child who can see the environment around them, can see where potential dangers are more likely to start crawling and walking sooner than a child with a visual impairment because they don't know where it's safe or where it's not safe. They can't tell. So they're going to stay in one spot. They're not going to move a whole lot. They're not going to explore the world. They're not going to develop. And so that can be really restricting, and it can delay many other developmental factors that we would want to see with a child. And so we want to provide them with a safe space to explore and develop. It's the same with limits. One of the biggest obstacles that adults in general, parents, teachers, administrators, daycare providers, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever, adults who work with children, adults who work with other adults. One of the biggest barriers to providing open communication, to providing growth, and to setting limits is our power struggles. Power struggles are huge. And it's very easy to fall into a power struggle. It can be go pick up your socks. No, I told you to go pick up your socks. Not going to do it. You're starting to engage in that power struggle, and you start to get frustrated as the adult, and you may start to raise your voice, or you may start to use other language. You may say, if you don't go pick up your socks, you're going to lose iPad time or something like that. And it can slowly build up to where you're engaging in this back and forth that is not productive at all. And so you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. You need to provide consistency, predictability, and follow through. So if you set a limit, if you say you can play on the iPad for 10 minutes and then we have to do this, you have to keep the line. You don't have to put a lot of emotion into it, but you have to keep the line. But you also need to tell them and communicate to them what will happen if they stay on the iPad longer than the 10 minutes. What is going to be the consequence? And it needs to be consistent. They need to know what to expect. And this can be really challenging to do when you are first establishing limits and trying to avoid power struggles. We do a training with teachers and staff on power struggles and working with students. And the first step is always identifying what's a trigger. So for some teachers, a trigger is a student just saying a curse word. For another teacher, that trigger doesn't bother them at all. But if they make a threatening comment to them, not a serious one, but say, my mom is going to come beat you up type of thing, maybe that's a trigger. So you need to look into yourself and say, what is a behavior that my child engages in that really upsets me and makes me defensive or makes me feel like they are undermining my authority, or that makes me feel like I'm not a good parent, or makes me feel out of control. Once you're able to identify that, you can start to identify where power struggles occur. Because I'm telling you, everyone engages in power struggles. You'll engage with power struggles with a spouse, a significant other, a coworker, your boss, your children, teachers. It's very easy to fall into a power struggle. So you want to make sure that you are identifying what makes you what makes you start to lose control. There we go. So the keys to success are these 4 areas. Think of it as a recipe, okay? The first 2 steps, you're identifying what routines and rules you want to have in place. What are the expectations in your household? Are you going to be making a list? Is it going to be something you're going to decide on as a family? What are the routines that you need to start with to kind of make your day go a little easier as a family? And this is something you can sit down with a significant other, the whole family, but it's really important to identify what are the routines and rules that you want established. I don't recommend 30 rules, 20 rules, because it's going to be really hard for a child to remember all of those rules. And depending on your child's personality, they can either be really worried about making a misstep and breaking a rule and become very anxious. Or you'll have a child who will say, well, that's so many rules. I know I'm not going to be able to do that. So why bother trying? So you want to make sure your rules are very easily understood and that they're not overwhelming to your child. You want to provide clear explanations of what those rules are. So don't make rules that are very broad. Make sure that they're specific and that they're easily understood by all of your children. And you want to make sure you're also providing support. If you're throwing out a new rule or a new expectation, make sure you explain that to your child in a way that they'll understand and make sure that they can then maybe repeat it back to you or demonstrate that rule or expectation. And let them know, like, this is something we're doing as a family, so let's practice what this looks like. If it's we at the end of the evening, we take our shoes to our room. And so first evening, you practice. The next evening, you practice. You show them how to do that. And you want to make sure you follow your plan every time. That's that consistency piece. So make sure you follow your plan. Even if it's, they're really tired, they've had a long day, they need to take their shoes to their room. That is the expectation. And that consistency is what really makes all of these steps flow and be successful. If you're not consistent, then you're not setting an environment that is safe and predictable for your child. And they're not going to know to expect the same reaction every time. If one day you say they have to take their shoes up, but another day they don't. So which is it? Am I going to get in trouble one day and not the other? What is that going to look like? Even though it doesn't seem like something that should be a scary situation, for kids, especially kids with anxiety or who have autism, they need to know what is expected and that they need it to happen every time so that they don't have to worry about something going differently. As caregivers, we often think that a consequence is punishment. And if you ever talk with anyone who does behavior training or they work with teachers in schools to kind of address behavior in the classroom, when we talk about consequence, we don't think of it as something negative all the time. We don't think of it as punishment at all. A consequence is simply anything that happens immediately after a behavior. Okay, so it could be that they take the shoes up the stairs, and maybe one of the things you guys talked about, besides what's going to happen if you don't do that chore or that rule, follow that rule, what are you going to do if they do follow that expectation? Oh, I'm going to give you praise, or oh, you're going to earn this, or oh, if you do this, then you get this. That could also be a consequence. And it can also be neutral. What if it's when they're first learning the rule and they forgot, but they came downstairs and were like, oh, I forgot my shoes. You're going to praise them for that. And you're like, yeah, that's right. You did forget. Let's try to remember tomorrow, but I'm glad you remembered to come back down and get your shoes. You want to make sure that you are giving consistent feedback. Whichever behavior they engage in, you give consistent feedback. If they do the task, if they forget, or if they engage in a behavior that is something you don't want to see, have consistency there because they need to know what to expect every time. When we're building those family routines, whether it's taking your shoes up the stairs or to your room at the end of the evening, that consistency, predictability, and follow through are going to really make the transition from having a routine to starting a new routine and creating a routine much easier. So this is just a graphic to kind of help remind you. Sometimes I've had parents take something similar to this and put it on the family refrigerator or even put it in their room so that they can review it, because it's not that it's the kids that are going to be having to engage in changes. It's also the parents, and they need to be able to um, look at that and remember that they are changing their own behavior as well. So here are just some sample routines that could work for your family. This is a tool that you can use, and you can use this exact one. You can find some on Google, or you may even be able to get some from the schools. Visual routines or visual schedules or anything like that is helpful, not just for children who have autism, but they're great for families in general. Chore charts, reward charts. If you're trying to, if you're working on spelling words or something like that, and you're putting specific time into addressing that, you could use a chart for that. But when you take a concept that is just a concept in your head, maybe you've talked about it with others, and you put it on paper, it becomes more concrete and real for students. And a lot of kids need that in their life. So if you don't have a nighttime routine or a morning routine chart or any sort of visual support like that in your house, I strongly encourage you reach out to your school or look on Google, or we may even have some here, and use those and adjust them for what your family needs are. When you're creating rules, again, you want to identify the family rules. What are your what's important to your family, and what do you want to focus on as a family? You want to be able to explain a rule. So again, using visuals can be really critical. And you may want to practice how to follow the rule. You may want to practice how to praise your child as well, because you don't want to just give very vague praise. Oh, good job, Johnny. But you may want to say, oh, I loved how you remembered to pick up your boots and you took them into your bedroom. Or I loved how you took your dishes from the table and rinsed them in the kitchen sink and then put them in the dishwasher. That took a lot of work. Thank you so much for doing that. That's going to help tonight when I finish cleaning up the kitchen or something like that. Be very specific. When you're at work or when you're praised by someone, it means more if it's specific, because it means that someone actually saw the work that you did and they are acknowledging that. And then you want to make sure you have a plan that everyone understands what the consequences are, whether it's consequence because they did engage in the behavior that you want to see. So there's praise, there's reward, or there's a consequence if they did not engage in the behavior that you want to see. And that's going to change and depend on what your family is willing to do and what your family can do and expects to do. A big area of concern for a lot of parents is being able to communicate so kids will listen. You need to give short instructions, but they need to be clear and specific, and they need to be developmentally appropriate. The way that I'm talking to you now is because you're adults. I wouldn't talk like this to a 2-year-old. Our vocabulary, our demeanor changes depending on the age, and that's okay. we need to make sure that we're using language that is easily understood for whatever developmental level your child is at. Sometimes that means few words and more pictures. Sometimes that means using a social story. Sometimes that means sitting down and actually having a conversation with the student because they can understand at that level. But you want to make sure that whatever rule or expectation you have or changes you have in your family, that you meet them where they're at. That's the first line of defense for being able to make changes. Meet them where they're at. You want to be physically close to them as much as they are willing to be, and you need to give reduced distractions as much as possible. But you also want to make sure you give them plenty of wait time because it can take a while for children to process what they hear or what they see. Their little brains are working really, really fast on many different things. And so sometimes it may take them a little longer to focus, take in what you're saying or showing them, put it into their long-term memory and be like, okay, I understand what this is. So give them time to process, give them wait time, and then ask them if they understand, maybe say, hey, can you repeat the rule or the expectation that I just gave? What are we supposed to do right now? Give them time to give that type of feedback back. We do that all the time in the classroom. Say, hey, I give instructions. Okay, what are you supposed to be doing now? Not to be condescending. Tone matters. But you can be like, okay, I just told you a couple of things that we need to do. What did you hear? What are the expectations right now? And again, this will depend on the developmental level of your student, but it's definitely important that you give them time to process what you're saying. Sorry, I lost my mouse. There it is. So this is a really great tool. I'm not going to go through all of these. This is just really for your reference, but these are things to avoid saying and the way that you can say it and model it, and then giving reminders. So for instance, the first one is don't say don't want, run. And I see this all the time in schools. The teacher's like, they're running in the hallway, don't run. And so they start skipping. And me as a school psychologist, I'm like, they complied. And the teacher's like, I didn't want them skipping. And I'm like, then you need to tell them what you do want. Even if they knew, you're still doing your due diligence to set that expectation correctly. So this is just a really great chart for you to reference if you would like. Here are some great starter phrases. You can do this when you do this. You can at first do this, then this. You can use any of these. So this is, again, just a really great reference for you guys. I really like the last one. I care about you too much to argue. I'm happy to discuss this with you when the arguing is finished. Using phrases like that. You're wanting to not put a lot of emotion behind your disappointment, or if you're upset at your child, you want to try to take that anger or frustration or what have you out of the equation. Have those visuals, but you also want to look at reinforcers. So when they do engage in a behavior, you want to see, how are you reinforcing that? Are you using verbal praise? Some kids really like that, and some kids, they could do without it. So what do they like? A high five, a secret hand signal, spending time together. I have a goddaughter who loves doing the dishes. And as much as her mom doesn't like her helping her with the dishes because she's 3, and so it's not so much cleaning as playing in the water, she uses that as a reward. Like, okay, after dinner, if you put your dishes into the sink, then we get to wash the dishes together. Works like a charm. She loves it. And then you also want to talk about those consequences. So this is another really great slides that you can reference. These next 2 slides are just common pitfalls. You don't want to take the independence away from your child, so don't tell them how to feel. Don't invalidate their feelings. They're feeling it. You may not think that it's a good emotion to have. You're like, why are you sad? Why are you anxious about that? It doesn't matter why. I mean, it matters, but in that moment, don't invalidate that. They are feeling that. Don't second guess it. Don't lie to head off a tantrum. Don't say your child's behavior is making you sad, which is something I've heard a lot of parents do. Don't take those tantrums personally. They have big emotions and little bodies, and a lot of them don't have the communication skills to tell you what's going on. So they tantrum. And don't use sarcasm. Just don't. This is just another model to follow. Acknowledge your child's feelings, communicate that limit, and then target the choice or an alternative. You can let off steam. So this is strategies to manage some big feelings. Again, this is just a resource for you. A big piece is going to engage and play with your child. You can learn a lot about your child if you engage and play with them. And oftentimes play is used as a communication tool. That's why play therapy exists, because it's an effective communication tool. That's often where you will see a lot of emotions come out that the child cannot verbalize. Here are just some limits matter because they build confidence. It allows children to gain that independence, and it develops self-control. All of those things we need to be able to actively engage in the world around us and to be productive members of our society. Okay, I'm a little over my time because I think I only had 30 minutes. But Sarah, there we go.
You're
Also
totally
has
fine. Go ahead and
resources
finish
too.
up. We are recording, so if anybody does have to leave, this will be posted so you can come back and watch the end later.
Great. The rest of the slides that you'll receive are just resources that you can access. And also, if there are specific situations in which you have specific needs at home, I can't answer what to do in every single situation because I don't have a lot of the background information. I don't know your child. So I can't give you very specific recommendations, but I always reach out to your team at the school who does work with your student. They are responsible for providing support for your student. And if you are struggling with something at home that they're also struggling with at school and they're addressing a certain way and they're starting to see progress, please ask for the resources and tools that they're using to address that behavior and see if you can implement that at home. They're responsible for helping with that. Some of them may not necessarily know how to help you implement at home. And so if that's the case, find someone who is, because there are people in the district that are tasked with those job duties. And again, just some more, a day in our shoes. This is free visual schedules and templates for autism. There's 6 best positive reinforcement tips for parents. These are some very good, well-researched resources. So again, if you have access to time, which is very precious for parents, and a computer in which you can really dive deep into these resources, please do. But again, a lot of the information that I pulled together today for this presentation has come from these resources. And that should be it.
Thank you so much, Letitia. That was fantastic information. I know that was really helpful for me to hear as a parent. I hope it was really helpful for everyone that was able to attend today. Like I said, we are recording today's webinar, so we will get this posted on the Region 10 website. Following this webinar, I will email everyone that was registered for today's event, and I will send them, again, the link to the presentation slides and also the link to where this will be posted once we have a chance to have it made accessible. For right now, I shared in the chat just websites for SpedTechs and Partners Resource Network. Those 2 organizations are always available to help with additional questions if you have those. I do want to highlight just a couple of upcoming events. I'm going to let Jim talk about the next webinar that Partners Resource Network is hosting, because I think that's the first one up. I'm going to drop the registration link in the chat, but I'll let him share.
Yes, Lane Pethick from Region 10 is going to be our guest speaker. Lane is my favorite speaker of all time. No offense, but I've seen him like 8 times, and he is just so inspiring, so energetic, and he just really wants you to, have the right information, to have the right energy to help our kids with disabilities. and it's next week.
Yeah, that one looks like it is January 23rd. Also coming up on January 31st, we have a statewide webinar that is with SpedTechs and Partners Resource Network both. The topic for that is going to be dispute resolution in special education, and I just shared that link to the flyer that contains the registration information. And then, of course, our next Region 10 family webinar is going to be on February 21st. And our topic for that webinar is going to be supporting children after trauma. And so I am sharing that information as well. So again, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time.
Do you have to do the poll?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the poll. Ashton, could you launch that for us, please? Thank you, Jim. I would have completely forgotten.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
It's
Yes.
been a while since our last one.
So Letitia, one thing I've learned about as being a parent is focusing your time on catching them doing the right thing is so much more effective than catching them doing the wrong thing. And if you reinforce them doing the right things, they tend to start happening more often.
Yes. One, oftentimes kids don't hear that they're doing good things. And so, especially when there are some big emotions involved, it can be really empowering to see them start to realize that there is, because if you think about if they hear negative, then they start to think, oh, I'm not good. I'm bad. I'm bad. I'm bad. And so once they start hearing more and more positives about themselves, they're more likely to be able to say, okay, maybe I am good. Maybe I can make good choices. And that can be so empowering for our students.
Yeah, I just love this topic. It's
Oh yeah, I could talk about this for a full day because I have.
So much good information.
Well, I hope everybody can join us next month, and thank you all for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.